Welcome to Outdrive, folks. I'm your host, Cliff Callis, and each week I'm bringing you actionable marketing insights you can apply to reach, connect with, and convert rural American consumers. Outdrive is powered by Callis, a full-service advertising agency with a focus on marketing rural America. Callis offers a wide range of integrated marketing services, including website development, search engine marketing, social media, video, and digital. We develop strategic and creative campaigns to build your brand and your business, and you can learn more about us at ecallis.com. Now join me in the front seat as we head out on the road to success. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome to Outdrive. We've got another great story to share with you today about life and work in rural America. You know, some people just know how to make things happen and get things done. And that brings us to our guest today. Kat Lucchesi is a professor of journalism at the University of Missouri, and she has quite an extensive background in sports marketing, public relations, and communications that she shares with her students, and she's going to share it today with us. Throughout her career, Kat has had the knack of creating jobs which fit her interest, experience, and passions, and she has a lot of cool stories to talk about. In the purest sense, Kat is a storyteller. And I think you're really going to enjoy hearing her perspective on marketing, teaching, and making a difference in other people's lives. Welcome to Outdrive, Kat.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here and be a part of this.
I'm excited to get to know you and to share some insights with our audience. I think we have a lot of different things that we can talk about. You have what I think is a really cool career path to where you are today, and we'll get into all that. Certainly, I'm interested in your perspective on public relations and social media and influencer marketing and digital and everything that's cool and happening right now. You know, I want to hear about what teaching at the collegiate level at a major university is all about. So before we go down any of those roads, though, let's start by having you tell our audience just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, you gave a little teaser into some of it, but my current role is, as you mentioned, a professor within the Missouri School of Journalism. And I went to school here. So I guess I went full circle. My undergrad here at Mizzou was broadcast journalism. And then I also have my master's in business from our business school here at Mizzou. And my first job, I was broadcast journalism as an undergrad, but my first job out of college was with Gary Pinkel and Mizzou football as part of the coaching staff. So I was on the coaching staff with all those coaches in the room, watching the film and the meetings, all of that. Just an internal storyteller is what I like to say is the easiest way to explain it. There was a lot as media evolved, for lack of better terms, in the 2009 to I left in 16 time period. It was a lot of adapting with my position, which made it exciting. And then after that, I went out to the Pacific Northwest and worked at Oregon State for their athletic department with the title of social media director. I was there for about 2 years, and then I took a little step away from college athletics, and I was always interested in the world of wine. And, as somebody who grew up in the Midwest, there are a lot of farmers out there, a lot of like mom and pops growing their grapes and selling the wine out of their garage. I'm like, these stories are amazing. And I was just interested to get a break from the busy life of college athletics. And so for a little over a year, I did some digital marketing with a wine corporation there. That was fun. And then I really actually missed working with college-aged students, and I always have wanted to be a professor. I think my professors when I was an undergrad definitely had a really big influence on me. And I really miss the way that anyone at any point in time can grow as they typically leave the home and go to college and are on their own, and they're typically 18 to 23-ish. That's a big time and change. And I loved seeing how people grow and develop during that time. So I knew I always wanted to go back and work with people around that age and watch them succeed and grow. I just didn't think it would be where I am right now with my age, but I miss working with that age group, even though I had interns and stuff. So I was always in connection with my former professors, and a job opened and they told me to apply. And I said, "Are you sure I'm qualified?" But here I am. I'm in my sixth year. So that's a real short journey into my career and my career life. I also like to tell the students that I've created every position that I've ever had except for my current one, because it's pretty hard just to create the role of a professor, but I have created quite a few classes here. But all the positions I've had, I just created and went with it and whatever was happening in the times of media. So that's a short about my career. I did grow up in Illinois. I mentioned I'm Midwestern, but I do call Missouri home because I feel like I've spent more than half of my life collectively here in Columbia. So I call Missouri home, but I grew up in Springfield, Illinois. So I understand our Midwestern. I'm Midwestern to the core.
Well, you've got such a great background for what you're doing. I have to think that the variety of things that you've been involved in give you a lot to talk about in class.
Yeah, it does. Sometimes, as I'm up there, the memories come back. I mean, yesterday, so one of my classes, I teach a audience strategy, which is everything online from social media to websites. And I started talking to them about some of the football players we recruited during the time. And I'm sitting there talking, and they're like cheering for these players that they know that were in the NFL and they probably loved growing up. I'm like, this is when the age difference shows up. But yeah, I was like really remembering what it was like to recruit Blaine Gabbert, Connor McGovern. So it was interesting. Sometimes things just pop up in memories in my head. But overall, I do use my experiences with Oregon State and the winery as well. But at the end of the day, stories are stories. You know that storytelling doesn't matter what we all do. That's the core, I believe, of everything I've done and everywhere I've been is telling stories. Now teaching others, that's the core of it.
Well, I agree with that. Having been out in the real world, I think you do have those stories that you can share with others, and it allows them to kind of gain a perspective and a perception and a better understanding of what it is that you're trying to teach them. So I think the storytelling is a great way to do that. Well, you're talking about some of the past players, and you're right up my alley here. I love the Mizzou Made campaign. And I love sitting at a football game and seeing all the players that are now playing in the NFL pop up on the screen. I think the crowd gets energized by that too. Why do you think the Mizzou Made campaign resonates so well?
I will be honest. I mean, I'm sure most people who do anything and it kind of resonates and, grows, you don't think it'll get to where it is. I mean, I did not think I would be, let's say, in Chicago and see that phrase on a billboard. That was definitely not our intention. I'm not sure. Sometimes people connect with something and sometimes they don't. And I think in this business of trying to reach audiences, you get more losses than wins. So you can come up with a strategy and it might not always go, but when one does, it does. So that one, I don't know, but the background and story behind it really is we were coming off a loss of our first season in the SEC, but we are coming up on the NFL draft, and Sheldon Richardson was going to be a first round draft pick. Let me back up. Mizzou football, I was hired mainly to tell stories to my target audience were high school football players, junior college recruits, right? So everything we did was about recruiting. Yes, it was public facing. Yes, some of the fans enjoyed it, donors, everybody enjoyed it, which is great. That was awesome. But all of it was a mindset of recruiting, because if you don't have the players, you can't play and win. So we sat in the room and we thought, we're coming off a losing season. What's kind of marketing can we do? And our director of operations at the time, Dan Hopkins, he also graduated from the journalism school. So he was great to work with from a creative storytelling mindset. And he said, we got to do something. We always knew the core of our program, but I don't think we were telling the story as like efficiently of, creating athletes who are successful in the classroom, who are successful in their lives, so as people, and then also who are successful in growing physically, whether that's for the game in the weight room. What does that look like? So mentally, physically, and academically. So we knew those three. And I've learned in storytelling, like when you tell in threes, I'm sure like it's just people connect with that. So those were our three main points. And Dan was trying to come up with a phrase for it. And at the time, during those times, that was in the spring as we're preparing for the draft, and most of the coaches were out on the road recruiting. So a lot of our graduate assistants, we all just got in our room where our normal coaches meetings were, and we sat around the table and we're just throwing phrases around. And I'll give full credit to Kinja Jackson. I will send this to him. He was a captain for our football team and a safety, and he's now a coach at the college level, and he was a graduate assistant. He said, "What about Mizzou made?" So he came up with the phrase, and I said, "Yes, thank you, Kinja," and wrote it down. So, I mean, the truth was, it was like, okay, that's our phrase. These are our key points. We already had that. Those are things we were already saying. But then for me, it was the execution of how we get that done. And so it was connecting with well-known alumni, not just athletes, but John Anderson, who's now my coworker, like those type of people, Michael Kim, to say, hey, this is what we're doing with this campaign. Can you share it once Sheldon is drafted? And so it's just storytelling. I mean, I'm telling you, it was just to let people know we are still on the map. Just because we joined the SEC and didn't have a winning season that first year doesn't mean what Gary Pinkel does isn't successful. We're consistent. We're going to stay to what we do. And as you know, how the story ended up, we ended up going to SEC East champion.
Got a pretty good season.
It's hard because internally we knew what we did and what we did well. We were going to have a first round draft pick. And so it's like, how can we better tell this story? Now, growing to the whole university from a marketing campaign, I mean, I was gone when that had all blown up and gone through. I mean, I've been in airports and seen on people's shirts. I'm like, this is so funny to me. But I can't tell you. I mean, we could ask whoever I think in successful branding and say, how did you know? And I think, and I teach this to my students and my audience class, is as long as you focus on your target audience and you focus in on the story and you don't go all over the place, stick to your goals, stick to your plans, stick to your strategy and your points, your words, your phrases, how you're going to execute that, be consistent with it, and it will catch on. And other people will come along the way, which is great. But you got to focus. If you don't focus on that target, I sound like a football coach right now, but it's true. If you don't focus on like that main goal, that's when you lose your campaign, your strategy, whatever it is. So maybe that's why it was successful, because we just figured out our 3 points and what laid under those 3 points and then one phrase. And I mean, we got tired of hearing it. I think I told Coach Pinkel 1,000 million times, make sure you say it multiple times in press conferences. And I tell people, and especially when I was at Oregon State, you should feel exhausted when you're saying these words and phrases internally. You should be annoyed by yourself by repeating this over and over, because you have to do it that many times for somebody else to catch on. And we were definitely over like saying Mizzou made, Mizzou made. But it worked. It's funny. I'm glad you asked that. I haven't talked about that in a while, but it was fun. But it's really just because it was around the NFL draft and telling people, hey, we're still here and we still got it.
Well, it's been very powerful and very effective. You had so many insights. I kept making notes saying, okay, I'm going to ask her about this. I'm going to ask her about this. I'm going to ask her about this. But you were really on target with, I'll call it KISS, keep it simple, silly, because there are so many distractions. And if you allow those to get in the way, they get in the way. If you can find a big idea like Mizzou made, like the phrase that Mizzou made, and then start building on it, break it up into all the different pieces that it becomes, that's when it becomes really powerful.
Yep.
So it's a great campaign. I noticed in your resume that you got to travel around with Michael Sam.
Oh, yeah. I saw you all for that.
When he was being given all the recognition that he deserved. Tell us about that experience. That had to be super cool.
He's so great. It's been a couple months since I've touched base with him, but we still do here and there. Yeah, what a season for him. But we called it a week with Michael Sam, right? Because he was up for a couple awards that week, and then he also graduated that week. So again, what else would a high school football player want to see but going to these fancy award shows? And I mean, literally one was a show, go to a show and ceremonies around the country. And I mean, we were in private jets, right? That was the most efficient way for us to get there at the time. And so that's the main reason I went. I guess my job gave me a fortunate to like go to these experiences because I had to tell the story. It's so funny because at the time I know it's a different experience, but I was just so focused on doing my job I do recognize because I was broadcast journalism and now I'm teaching these students who work in journalism and might not be internal with the team. I do recognize that. I mean, I knew Michael since he was a freshman. And so I'd known him 5 years at that time. So, I mean, it's just simple like, here comes Kat, here's the mic. Like, put on the mic, I'm going to follow you around. I was just another fly on the wall, another person around, very comfortable with a camera in their face and around them, especially like that season, he didn't always want media around him, but he was fine with me because they didn't see me as media. I was with them for everything. I don't know. I haven't thought about that in a long time. So I'm glad you all asked it. I should go back and watch that video. But he had his signature, like when he sacked somebody, he would clap and like do the little cheer thing. And to be honest, what sticks with me the most is at graduation, he did that across the stage in Jesse Hall,
Oh, that's awesome.
laughing so hard that I'm like, do not make an audible laugh because it will catch on the video, maybe. And my reactions are like, I have to keep it together to get this shot. And so, yeah, he did that across the stage. And I was like, oh my gosh, like the personality never fails with any of the players. But I think that was a good way to end it, was graduating on a Saturday. I actually talked to some of my current students the last semester about that story because they were naming some of the players who were at those other awards. And I was like, look, I have this football in my office from that ceremony. They're like, what? I was 5 when that happened. I was like, of course you were.
The rest of the graduates had to be like just cheering crazy for him.
Yeah, it was in Jesse Hall. It was a smaller graduation. There was definitely a crowd cheering and screaming. And when anybody does something like that across stage, it's funny, but everybody knew who he was. So yeah, it was fun.
As I hear about that experience, I'm thinking, very few people get to do something like that in their life. So that's pretty cool. But I liked how you talked about the focus that you had just doing your job. You didn't get distracted. Maybe you did at the time, but you didn't get distracted with all the hoopla. You did your job, you told the story, and that's pretty cool. I think about another video that you did, thinking about other players, and we both are friends with Tim Barnes, the video you did with Tim when he was in the NFL. I think it was awesome. In your opinion, what makes a good video?
I think making a good video or a good story comes down to the interviews and the questions, right? So you're asking great questions. For a video, yes, you have to have some preparedness of, hey, this is the perfect world of my opening visual. This is what it's going to be. I think actually with him in the NFL, I almost got to mic up some of the players. I did mic up some of the Mizzou players, not during a game, but we are pretty close. I think it was with Tim, or maybe it was with Denario Alexander when he was with the Rams, but I was about to convince them to let me mic them up during warmups and stuff. But that's another thing. You never know. You got to ask for all the things until you're told no. I'm sorry that might come off as bad, but I've also been a lot on the PR side, but you don't know until you ask, especially as a storyteller and journalist. So what makes a good video is thinking of all the possibilities, not being scared to ask for it, coming up with a layout and a plan of the perfect world. And then when it doesn't happen, I mean, when you're in the moment capturing video, where do I go? What do I do? I mean, you know this as somebody who interviews and talks constantly and holds conversations. It is a conversation. It's not a question, answer. It's listening to what they say, doing your research on the person, doing a follow-up, anticipating the answers. And to me, as long as you have those interviews and those visuals to start, you sit down and you're probably going to have a better product at the end. If you already went in trying to anticipate what it might look like, you probably are going to get that and then some. So that's capturing content. Another thing with video editing is I have my notebook. So we hand notebooks out in my reporting class week 1. So I handed those out last week and I tell them, I might be capturing video and I might be worrying about my tripod and the microphones, but I still take a notebook. And when something is funny or catches my mind or it's bright or loud or I don't know the environment that I don't know that the camera is going to capture as well or audio, I write it down. So if I'm interviewing somebody and it's funny, or I cry or I feel something, which is okay to feel that, write it down. Because once you get it the second time, you're not going to feel that same way. So, marking down as you're capturing it, like what really stood out. So then when you sit down and edit, you're like, I know I have to include that. That was an authentic experience that I felt that I'm trying to convey that story to other people. So those are some tips and tricks I give with video storytelling. I think that goes for creative and or journalism work, but plan for the best, listen and ask good questions, and then always have a plan B, C, and D. You never know.
So you answered that question really pretty good. Plus, you used my favorite phrase in the whole world twice. You never know. And then you said ask, because all they're going to say is no, or they might laugh at you, whatever. But you never know unless you ask.
Right.
So good job.
Thanks. I was like, did I do that? Did I do all right?
Yeah, you did. So let's continue kind of on in that vein. In our world, and I know you know this, video is so powerful. Every one of our clients that use video are seeing amazing results from it because it's the way that buyers, consumers, whatever, are consuming their information, right? So video is very powerful. What else are you seeing being used today that you think is really effective?
Yeah. Well, that also goes back to the keep it simple, think about your target audience. Unfortunately, people are extremely distracted more so now than ever, every single day. Literally in class, I say, put your phones and laptops away. We will come bring those out because I want the focus to be here right now. But when you are trying to market, sell, just reach somebody, it's short and simple, as quick as possible, which is a lot harder to do than the shorter you make it, the harder it is. I think when I teach social media storytelling, especially since a lot of our students grew up being on social media and around social media, I think it's a thought process of like, oh, that's pretty simple. No, it's actually harder because it's shorter and quicker. I would just mainly want to agree with you that it is difficult. On the flip side, what I teach a lot is the targeted advertising that we see, whether that is social media or online. I do think that that is getting better and better. Some people might say it's for good or for bad, but I think it can be for good. And that's how we teach it in our course. You can use the information that is out there that people share. We talk about media literacy, be aware of what you're sharing about yourself out there on the internet. But I do think, for example, a local newspaper or radio station who might not be able to reach their audience as much as they want, we can do a little bit of paid advertising to say, hey, we have this community event. We want to hear what type of stories you're doing. And I also see that on my own. I mean, I ask students, everybody I know, have you ever purchased something online? Well, you have to see it 2 or 3 times. And I think the way, and I teach this in my audience class for a week or two, is the way that you can target people. And it sounds scary when the way I describe it, but the way you can target a certain demographic by what they searched, what they're looking for, you can reach people and give them the information that they want and what they need to know. And I don't think that it's always a bad thing. I mean, I'm guilty of being like, I'm looking for a pair of shoes to wear to this wedding or something. And if I search it, I'm probably going to get a targeted ad. And then that saved me time on shopping. That's a simple example, but I think it can be used for good where we need to connect more with each other in our communities and share information that is necessary. So to answer your question, I think paid social media and online advertising is getting better and better and better. It is extremely hard to do. I have not met anybody who knows and understands the complete inner workings of all the social media companies and how they're changing every single day. But I know that if you run an ad and you track it over a couple of weeks, it will continue to get better and better. So not only creating that content, which we talked about is difficult as it is, but once you create it, let's make sure, since people are so distracted, let's make sure it's hitting the people that we want. And you can do that with $25, $30 is the thing. It's not hundreds, thousands of dollars. That would be a waste of money. But I do think that that is a really good thing that anyone can use to help promote whatever they're working on. And I think when it comes to ethics, depends what it is, especially with journalism and what you're doing with it. But I teach it more obviously that it can be used for good and for information.
Yeah, absolutely. It just gets better and better because there's more and more data. It's kind of like AI. It's a little scary when you think about it, but the bottom line is it makes marketing easier and more effective because you can target and you can target based on interests and preferences and searches and buying and all that. And so if you think, well, the bottom line about it, advertising is provide information to potential buyers so that they can learn about you, become interested in it, and then buy the product. So this technique, this strategy will continue to get better and better as there's more and more data.
Yep. And again, I think whether it's AI or data and what you're sharing out there, it just comes to just informing yourselves more and more, everyone. I don't assume my students know anything. They might know how to use it, but do you understand how this beginning of AI, how it was created? Do you understand what type of data is out there? Are you sharing your locations? That's a really, really easy way to target people is your location. And so how are different companies sharing your data? And so becoming informed on that, then people can be more comfortable with knowing what's out there. I don't think that's perfect by any means, but I think it's not going away. So we just need to try to be as informed as we can.
Yeah. And take advantage of it as an opportunity as a marketer and a storyteller. You mentioned social media multiple times. That's kind of a thread through all of our podcasts. But do you see social media as public relations?
I mean, it can be. I think not all the time. I think the best part about social media is literally being able to share and connect with people that you might not have been able to otherwise. I mean, I remember the dial up of the internet. I played that for my students. They're like, what is that?
It was a bizarre noise. That's a totally bizarre noise.
And that was when social media was so authentic and where we could connect and meet people that we never had before. There is that part of it. And I do think there is kind of that way that you can engage that is a positive with it. So I think at the core, that's what it is. I think of it from a literal social standpoint. And that's probably the original creation behind some of these. I would think that was a good intention. But yes, I think of course it's public relations. Of course it's, trying to manage your brand, company, organization, nonprofit, whatever, and trying to say, hey, come find out about us. I don't like controlling your own story because I don't think what I did was controlling my own story, but giving you another outlet to tell your own story as a company, for lack of better terms, company organization. So yeah, it's completely PR, but I also think it's everything else. Like, I think it's so many things, but I enjoy it the most because you can connect and stay in touch with people.
Yeah, it is a great way to do that. You're right. I see things on Facebook from people that, I haven't seen in a lifetime, really. What about influencer marketing? What's your take on it?
Yeah, love that. I am beginning to enjoy it more and more because, again, when I talk about the paid advertising, the partnerships, I mean, you see it now with NIL, which I know you've talked about previously here before. I think it is becoming more and more successful and becoming more validated. Not just, oh, I'm just an influencer. I have friends who have contracts with Nike, with big companies around the world where they will use their own brand and identity to market for them. And that is their salary. That is mind blowing to me. They're running it just as I would running a social media accounts when I was at Oregon State, which you have to be successful. I mean, there are students in my class who have had partnerships and, been influencers, but if they're wanting to do that for their full career, it's like, well, here's literally all the aspects you need to know of it and how to do it successfully. It is a full-time job. It's not for me. I don't like the spotlight. I did my TV in college and I'm done. I got a little of it when I was with Mizzou football, but that was not the goal or attention. That just comes with being around a football team. So, but if you are a business, nonprofit company, it is something to consider. We do teach a week of it in my audience class is there a certain person within your brand and organization who could be the persona and the voice? Or is that something you should consider? Because again, back to storytelling, people connect with people. People want to hear each other's stories. It's just the truth. Or you could personify the dog, right? It's just the way you tell stories. That's how I learned it. I believe it. Once you hear someone's individual story, you're more likely to say, okay, I care about them. and what they did, or I connect with that. Now, what are we getting to the point? And that's definitely what can be done through influencers, whether that's internal within your organization or external. And I do think it's becoming, I don't want to say taken more seriously, but it's becoming more and more successful because there's more of a business plan behind it rather than a simple one trade off. Those still probably happen, but I know plenty of people who are doing this full time and or have agents helping them with it, which is awesome. I support it. I don't think I personally would do it or be an agent for it, but I think it's very fascinating and successful.
Yeah, I agree. And seems to be working, which is the bottom line.
It does.
I love how you have made a lot of your points very applicable to different members of our audience, whether it's small business, bigger business, maybe it's a nonprofit or whatever, but you're making it very relevant. And I appreciate that. You mentioned working with Gary Pinkel for years. What a great opportunity that is. And now you're involved in his foundation, MADE. Tell us about that.
Well, I actually texted him this morning. I said, I'm going on this podcast. I want to talk, if I get the chance, I want to chat about the foundation. So the whole story with, GP Made making a difference every day, it really back aligns to how he was as a coach, but, mostly with a focus on children. So how he can help children related through cancer who have cancer, mainly leukemia and lymphoma, as he has, and helping a lot with cancer research, giving scholarships through his foundation, which has been pretty cool. Some of the coolest stuff to see to kids throughout the state of Missouri. And then kids who might have physical challenges or disabilities. Both his brother and sister were in wheelchairs most of their lives. And so that is also something very close to him. And so he missed doing something. I think he treats it almost like a full-time job again. But it's an amazing foundation. And his wife, Missy, she has great PR marketing background as well. And so she's super creative. So I've enjoyed working with her, both when I was with the team and then with the foundation. But what they do is they have really great events year round. So I'm going to share one of the upcoming ones they have is his golf tournament. It's May 18th and 19th is when it is. So it's usually in May. And all the money from that goes to the foundation. Last year, one of the doctors from the Children's Hospital came out and talked, and one of the patients who was at the Children's Hospital came out there, and Coach Pinkel gave him a football. Look, I'm like, feel like I'm going to cry. I mean, because they're just people, they come and they tell these stories, and you really see the direct impact it's making on people, especially here in the state of Missouri. And I'm glad he's still doing all of it. It's a lot of work. Like he is attention to detail, like the theme, the colors. Missy's the same way. It's great helping and working with them. They care a lot about it. And it's mainly, they just want to keep connecting and making an impact with people, especially children. So you can look up GP Made. I think it's going into its 6th or 7th year of the foundation. So pretty fascinating. I mean, he went through the Hall of Fame, got inducted to the Hall of Fame, got all these awards in that same fall, and was still running the foundation at the same time. Like we are all over the place, but it's been great. And I mean, I'm still obviously close with him. And that was a good thing about coming back to Missouri is still getting to connect with them. So I look up to them and their families. They're great. Thanks for bringing that up.
You're welcome. So, folks, GP Made golf tournament May 18th and 19th. And if you want to find out more about this amazing organization, go check it out. At this point, if somebody is hearing something that they might like to converse with you about, how would they connect with you?
Oh, sure. I guess my email is the best. So it's my last name. I don't love the spelling, but it's LucChesik, my first initial. So Lucchesi K at Missouri.edu. That's the easiest way to get to me. I am on social media, but honestly, I'm not on it as much when I'm trying to work and get my job done. So if I go to it, it is mostly to prepare for what I'm teaching for my class, at least at this time of the year. I go in my seasons of social media, but LucChesik at Missouri.edu is the best way to connect, or I can help connect you with other people within the journalism school.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Really enjoyed visiting with you today. There was so much more I'd like to visit with you about, maybe another time. As we wrap up today, the focus of our podcast is marketing to rural America, and you've done an amazing job of sharing your insight and your perspective about strategies and tactics and things that people are doing successfully. When I say the words rural America, what does that mean to you? How would you describe it?
Well, I love rural America as I grew up in Springfield, Illinois, but my high school was definitely rural America. I had a graduating class of 82 people, Pleasant Plains High School. And my mom grew up, as I say, on my grandma's farm and was one of 13. So I first think of my grandma as like in her farmland and a lot of places where I grew up. But then I honestly think of good people. I mean, I guess I'm thinking about our Midwestern people. But then if I think about it from my career standpoint, I don't think it's too different than anywhere else. What I mean by that is when a lot of our students out here are going and telling stories around our smaller towns around mid Missouri, right? One of my students groups is focusing on Fulton this semester. We've had Moberly in the past. My other class, we're working on Mexico, depending on what you think is small town. So I'm saying not a big city. I think that that's subjective. But I'm saying that the stories there are the stories of America and who we are. It's no different than anything that's happening anywhere else. It's definitely happening in these other towns. But I believe that people are kinder and are more excited to tell their stories and share their stories. That's my experiences. And I don't know, I think I just think of nice people who want to share and tell their stories. I guess I experienced that out in Oregon too. I'm thinking from a Midwestern mindset, but when I was out in Oregon, in the smaller towns around Corvallis, where Oregon State was, I just like went and talked and people just welcome you in. And people aren't that different from each other. Once you start getting to talk to them, every single person has a story and they want to share it with somebody. Even if they don't think they have a story, they definitely do. So I guess that's what I think about. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that's what I think about. And those are some of my favorite places to go is just travel around to different towns in Missouri, hopefully on my bicycle and meet new people and go to local restaurants and talk to them. So that's one of my favorite things to do. So mostly to meet people.
Well, love that description. And I hope we see you riding through the Katy Trail in Sedalia one of these days.
I have done that. Yeah, I do love it out there.
Absolutely. Hey, I've loved visiting with you. What else would you like to share that you think our audience might find interesting or maybe even inspiring?
Well, when you're talking about ways to connect with me, I will tell you, let me do my own little sales pitch is my audience strategy class. We do work with clients. Again, that's why I'm mentioning nonprofits, local businesses, and local journalism outlets. We would love to work with anyone who is interested in that. It is over a semester. It's basically free consulting on everything from SEO to social media writing to AI to whatever the client wants as a goal, as long as it's an online format, we can work and adjust with it. So that's my own little pitch. I am teaching it in the summer. So I am looking for clients for over the summer, the fall. But I do try to focus on like local, smaller businesses, nonprofits, the ones who really need more of that free consulting and then maybe want to hire one of our students in the future. And then obviously our local journalism outlets around different towns. So that's my pitch. I don't know if that's inspiring. We're here to help, but people who have really, really enjoyed it. Mike Alden was one of our clients 4 years ago. He just came and talked to my class last week with his consulting firm and he loved it. I think connecting with the students is so fun and refreshing. That's the best part about my job every single day. There's your inspiration. The students are my inspiration. That's why I'm back here. They tell me and excite me into things I've never thought about and make me laugh constantly. So I appreciate it.
Sounds like you're in a great place. Win-win opportunity with partnering with Mizzou Audience Class. So if you're out there and you're looking for some help, Kat's where you go.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. Folks, thanks for listening to Outdrive. I hope you've enjoyed our visit today with Kat Lucchese, professor of journalism at the University of Missouri. Come back again next week and I'll take you down the roads of rural America where it's heaven on earth.
Thanks for taking a ride with us on OutDrive. This episode is complete, so head on over to eCallis.com for more insight you can apply to help drive your business growth. And be sure to sign up for our free monthly e-letter, OutThink, for even more helpful content about marketing to rural America. Have a great day and keep on driving.